Too often, people want what they want, and they usually want it right now. It's usually happiness, which makes sense. But the irony of their impatience is that only by learning to accept the bad along with the good do we usually obtain those things that are truly worthwhile. Now, listen, if you will, to a story about a young boy named Peter, a boy who learns this lesson the hard way. Once there was a widow who had a young boy called Peter. He was a strong, able boy, but he did not enjoy going to school. He was forever daydreaming. Peter, what are you dreaming about this time? His teacher would say to him. I'm thinking about what I'd like to be when I grow up, said Peter. Be patient. There's plenty of time for that, his teacher would say. Being a grown-up isn't all fun, you know. But Peter found it hard to enjoy what he was doing in the moment. He was always hankering after that next thing. In winter, he longed for it to be summer. In summer, he longed for the warm fires of winter. At school, he would long for the days to be over so he could go home. And on Sunday nights, he would sigh and say, if only the holidays would come. No matter how impatient he was, he had a good friend named Liza. She was good as a companion as any boy, and she never grew impatient with him. When I grow up, I shall want to marry Liza, said Peter. More often, Peter would wander through the forest. He would daydream and imagine about his future. But one hot afternoon, as he wandered through the forest, he grew sleepy. He heard someone calling his name. Peter, 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 wake up. He opened his eyes and he sat up. Before him stood an old woman. She had in her hand a silver ball. From this silver ball, there was a silken golden thread that came out of it. See what I've got here, Peter, the woman said, offering the ball to him. What is it? Peter asked, curiously touching the fine golden thread. This is your life thread, she said. Do not touch it, and time will pass by normally. But if you wish for time to pass by more quickly, you must just pull the magic thread. But I must warn you, once the thread has been pulled out, it cannot be pushed back in again. In fact, it will disappear like a puff of smoke. But this gift is yours, should you choose to accept it. Do you want it? Peter seized the gift joyfully. It was just what he wanted. He examined the silver ball. It was light and solid, made of a single piece. Just a tiny little hole came out where the thread came from. Peter ran home and tucked it away in his pocket. He wanted to tell his mom, but he remembered the warning from the old woman. The following day at school, Peter sat daydreaming about what he would do with his magic thread. The teacher scolded him for not concentrating on his work. Peter, focus! He felt in his pocket and he felt that silver ball calling his name, and he wondered what would happen if he gave it a tug. All of a sudden, the teacher asked for all the students to gather their belongings and to line up by the door. It had worked! Peter was overjoyed. He couldn't believe it. All his problems were over. But one day, however, it occurred to him it was stupid to pull the thread just a little bit. He could give that thread a mighty tug, and he could be done with school altogether. That's exactly what he did. He found that he was a carpenter, and he lifted great beams upon his back, and he hammered them down, and he loved his job. He was outside every day, and he got the smell of that forest. Well, time was passing by quickly enough, but he wanted to marry Liza. But as we all know, things do not always go the way that we plan. Before the wedding could take place, Peter received an official-looking notice. It was a letter, a trepidation, which said that he had to have 3 years military service. Well, there's nothing for it. We'll just have to wait, Liza said. But the time will pass by quickly enough. You'll see. There's so many things to do in preparation for our life together. Peter smiled bravely, knowing that 2 years would seem like a lifetime to him, 3 years. Once Peter had settled into life at the barracks, he began to feel that life wasn't so bad after all. He quite enjoyed being with the other young men, and the duties But then he remembered the old woman's warning to pull the thread wisely. And so he refrained for a time. But after a while, Peter began to grow impatient. He got tired of all the routine duties, and he determined that he should pull the thread. And so he did. On the day of his wedding, everyone was there. Peter could hardly wait to show Liza the house that he had built for her. Well, as he looked over the crowd of people, he noticed his mother. His mother, her hair had started to turn very gray, and Peter started to feel guilty for pulling the thread. Henceforth, he would only pull the thread when absolutely necessary. Well, a few months later, Liza announced that she was going to have a child, and Peter was overjoyed. Every time he looked at that child, he thought of all his dreams coming true. But sometimes, when that child would cry or was sick and would just continue to cry through those sleepless nights, he would give the thread a little tug so that the baby would feel well again. Well, times were hard and business was bad. Peter found that he was not as successful in his business as he had wanted. He also found that he was now a middle-aged man. He saw wrinkles where he had not noticed them before. His hair had started to turn gray. As he looked in the mirror, he started to feel afraid. His mother was looking older and older every day. It was no use to pull the magic thread because every pull of the thread would just hasten her death. All too soon, she died. And as he stood by her graveside, he wondered how it was that life had passed by so quickly without even pulling the thread. One night, as he lay in his bed, kept awake by his worries, he thought about how much easier life would be if his children were all grown. So he gave the thread a mighty tug. When he awoke, his children had all left and gone to different parts of the country. He and his wife were now alone. His hair had turned white. And Liza, too, was getting old and sick. He couldn't bear to have her suffer anymore. So when she was suffering or sick, he pulled the thread. But the problem was, the minute she would get better, another illness or another problem would grow in its place. Picked up the magic ball and looked at it, and he saw to his dismay that the thread had changed from gold to white. It had been a long time since he had taken a walk in the forest, and he decided to take a walk to think about all of his different worries. He sat down to rest, and he was awoken by someone calling his name. Peter, Peter. He looked up and he saw the old woman, the woman he had seen so many years ago. Peter, have you had a good life, Peter? I'm not sure, Peter said. Your magic ball was a wonderful gift. I've never had to wait for anything in my entire life. And yet, I feel it has all passed me by so quickly. I haven't had to take in time to take in the good things or the bad. And now I have nothing to show for it, not even memories. I don't feel that your gift has brought me luck. In what way do you wish things could have been different? Maybe, Peter said, if you'd given me a ball where I could take the string and I could have tucked it back inside again, and I could relive those moments that had passed by so quickly. You ask a great deal, the woman said. Do you think that God allows us to live our lives twice over? But I will tell you this, I will let you choose. I choose, Peter said, to live this life as if for the first time, but without your magic ball. Fine, the woman said, give me back my ball. He stretched out his hands, he gave the woman her ball back, and he lay down with exhaustion. And when he awoke, he was no longer in the forest. In fact, he was back in his own bed. Oh, his mother was waking him up. Peter, Peter, wake up. You'll be late for school. Mother, he said, I've had the most terrible dream. I dreamed Yeah, my life passed me by quicker than a flash of an eye. And I had nothing to show for it, not even memories. That's silly, her mother said. That will never happen. Memories are the one thing that we have, even when we're old. Now quickly, get ready for school. Liza's waiting for you. As Peter got ready to go to school, he stepped out into the bright, beautiful morning with a beautiful sunrise, blue skies, perfect clouds. And as Peter walked to school with Liza, he noticed what a bright summer morning it was. The kind of morning where it feels good to be alive. Soon he'd be with his friends, his classmates, and even the prospect of lessons didn't seem so bad. In fact, he could hardly wait. Can you? I hope so. Would you take the ball?